Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from anthonymorganti.com. This is episode 1 of Learn Lightroom 6, also known as Lightroom CC. If you purchase the program outright, it is called Lightroom 6. If you happen to subscribe to the Creative Cloud from Adobe, they refer to it as Lightroom CC 2015. Please be aware that throughout the video series I may refer to it as Lightroom 6, I may refer to it as Lightroom CC. As far as we're concerned, I'm talking about the same thing. And whichever version you own, whatever I do in the video, you'll be able to do in your version. Now, this video series comes on the heels of my very popular Learn Lightroom 5 video series, which are available on my website and on YouTube. I'm going to do this video series very similarly. All the videos will be for free on YouTube and on my website. You could stream them anytime. One thing I'm going to do different, and I'm very surprised by this, is I received a lot of emails from folks saying they wanted to purchase the videos. They either wanted to download them or they wanted to purchase a DVD. So when the video series is done, I hope in a couple weeks, I will have the videos available for purchase. And I will include in that purchase all the raw files that I use throughout the video so you could work along as I work on the images. Now, this video is a quick start video, so I may gloss over some things in this video, but be aware we're going to be covering it in depth in a later video. So let's real quick just take a look at the workspace in Lightroom. You see the image that I have selected is in the middle, and on either side are panels, and this is cleverly called the left panel and this is called the right panel. Along the bottom they call this the film strip. These are all the images that I happen to have in whatever folder I have active at the moment. Along the top, this is called the module picker. Now in this video series we're going to be talking about the library module and the develop module. And in this video we're going to import some images into the library, and I'm going to develop one of those images, and then I'm going to export that image to show you how that's done. So let's import an image right now. Now, as soon as you plug in your memory card, Lightroom very well might begin the import process for you. And if it doesn't, all you have to do is go up to File, Import Photos and Video. And what happens is the import dialog pops up. And as I mentioned, this might have happened already. As soon as you plugged in your memory card, this box might have popped up. And you can see I have an SD card in here, and I only have, I think, 7 images or so, just for demonstration purposes. So we're going to import these images. Now, if for any reason Lightroom didn't find the images, you could navigate to them along this left panel. So as you can see, this is the SD card I'm using. It's an XT1. That's a Fuji camera, and these are the images right here. And it will find the images for you after you highlight the folder that the images are in. Now along the right panel we have some things. Smart previews allow you to work on the image if you have your images on an external hard drive and you don't always have that external hard drive plugged into the computer. If you click this box, Lightroom will create what they call smart images, so you could actually work on the image, process the image without the hard drive being plugged in. The downside of that is they take up a lot of space, so I do not have that checked. Don't import suspected duplicates, which I like checked. That's up to you. You can make a second copy if you want to copy the raw file from your SD card to a backup location. That's usually a good idea. In this case, I have software that does that automatically, so I do not have that checked. And this is add to a collection. We're going to talk about collections in a later video. Now we could rename the files. I don't do any of that. We could apply during the import some develop settings, so you could actually add some processing as you're importing. I choose not to. You could do some metadata here if you had any, untitled presets, whatever. You could give it a name. One thing I do suggest you do though is put some keywords for the images. This is cityscape right here of these images here, and separate them by a comma. This happens to be Buffalo. Now I'm just going to do the 2 right now just for the sake of time. It is recommended that in most instances you put around 6 or more keywords in there, and this will help you later if you're trying to find an image. You could search by keyword and you could find the image. So Cityscape Buffalo. Now I'm going to put it into a subfolder. But before I jump into this, you can see here, this is my area where the pictures are. This isn't actually where I store my images. It's going to my hard drive on my computer, and I don't want it there. I want it on my Lightroom um, hard drive, which is an external hard drive. So I have it called Lightroom Raw Images. So I don't want it up here. I'm going to click here, and I want it here. And you can see these are all my folders that have all my images in them. So I want it in Lightroom Raw Images. And I'm going to give it a name in a subfolder, and I'm going to call it Cityscapes, like that. Okay, so now if we look down here at the Lightroom raw files and we come down here, you can see that it's very dim, but it's Cityscapes. That means that Lightroom will create this folder, and you can see it's in my Lightroom raw files folder. This is where I choose to put it. Where you choose to put yours probably will be different. Now, I did the keywords. I have it chosen where I want it to go, and I gave a name to the subfolder that I want it to be in. And I'm going to click Import. Now, it will take depending on how many images you have and how fast your computer is and how fast your SD card is, it may take anywhere from 10 seconds like this, or it may take several minutes until it imports all the images. Now, we're still in the library module, and we have the images here. We have our film strip along the bottom. I could use the right arrow keys and the left arrow keys to navigate through the images. I choose now to go to the develop module right away. So I'm at the develop module, and I could see the images in this larger screen. Now, one thing I want to do though is I want more screen for the image. So I could close these panels down. In the left panel here, there's nothing here I need right now. So I'm going to close this down for now. I'm going to close this, if I could get my toolbar to go away, close that one down. And I'm even going to close the module picker up here down so I have more room to see my image. Now I need my right panel open because these are all the adjustments I'm going to do. Now, even though the film strip isn't showing, I still could navigate through each image by hitting my arrow keys. So I'm just going to page through them as we see. As you can see, I was actually creating a panorama right here. I was going left to right. Now, actually, this image is probably the better image, but I'm going to use this image because it's crooked, and I want to show you how to straighten it. So we're going to process this image. Now, this is a RAW file, and I encourage you, if you don't shoot RAW, and your camera is capable of shooting RAW, that you shoot RAW. And there is going to be an article, there is an article on my website that explains all the advantages of shooting RAW. You have way more dynamic range. You have a lot more colors. You have a lot more information in a RAW file than you would in a JPEG. And I encourage you to shoot RAW if possible. The downside is when you look at it right out of the camera, it looks like crap. It doesn't look good. But that's why Lightroom is here. We're going to develop this image. Now, the cool thing about Lightroom, everything you do is non-destructive. So all these adjustments we do here are not touching the raw file at all. Lightroom is going to do one of two things depending on how you have it set up. It's actually going to create another file, they call it a sidecar file, with all your adjustments go in the sidecar file, and Lightroom never writes or even touches anything in the raw file itself. It just reads it. So the raw file's never modified, and that's cool. If your computer ever crashed in the middle of an operation, it would corrupt the raw file, and if it was an important raw file like you were shooting a wedding or something, that could be devastating. Well, to get around that, Lightroom never touches the raw file. Everything is non-destructive. It's either put in that sidecar file as I mentioned, or it's written into the Lightroom library. By default, it writes it to the Lightroom library. Now, we're going to process this image as I mentioned. Along this right panel here, you can see these are called tabs. We have basic, tone curve, HSL, split toning, and so on all the way down. You could do them in order. You could jump around between the different sections. It's really up to you. There's no set way to do it. Now, I typically start in the basic panel, and you can see we have all these adjustments, exposure, contrast, and all this. Now, Right now, as I look at the image, the white balance is fine. So I do not have to do any adjustments for white balance. That means the temperature and tint look okay to me. So I'm not going to adjust any of those. In a later video, we will do a white balance adjustment. So we will be doing that. Now, the main adjustments in the basic panel though are right in here. And these are exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks. And this can be confusing to folks. So I'm going to show you a relatively easy way that you could adjust these. And I don't often do it this way, but for a beginner, if you are a beginner with Lightroom, try it out this way and you'll find that this will work very well. Now you could, of course, right here where it says auto, you could click on auto and it will automatically adjust all these, as you can see here. And it's got a decent picture, I guess. But you know the whole idea of using Lightroom is so you could adjust it to your taste and to what you like to do. So we're not going to do auto. So I want to undo these. Well, just down here, reset. If you ever make a mistake, you ever have it, you went through and you adjusted about 400 things and you don't like what it is, you could click reset down here. One other thing I want to make you aware of, if we go over and open this left panel again, if you go in history right here, you could see it keeps track of every step. Watch, I'm going to move contrast. I'm going to move this whites. I'm just moving these arbitrarily. I'm not really messing around. You can see every step was taken note in here. And if I didn't like this highlights adjustment, I could just go one step before it, and it will go before I adjusted that highlights slider. The white clipping, see I just, and you can see the picture changes. So all the steps you do are kept track over here. Now if I want to start from the beginning again, as I mentioned, I could hit this reset button down here, or I could just click at the very first thing here, which was import. And we're right back where we started. You can see all the sliders are right in their default positions. So we're going to close that down. Now we're going to adjust this shot. Now the first thing I like to do is I like to do the highlights and the shadows first. What I'm going to give you now is a quick way to do it as you're beginning, and as we get through the videos you're going to see that there's other ways you could adjust these. So highlights, what I often do is, you can see the picture is relatively underexposed. That's because I exposed for the highlights. That means I underexposed on purpose, so I had detail in the clouds and the sky. So when you underexpose a shot on purpose, in this case exposing for the highlights, what I would often suggest you do is then go into Lightroom, and I would take highlights all the way down even further and open the shadows all the way up. Now you can see it's got kind of a blah flat look to it, but it did open up a lot of the shadows and the darkness that was down here in the buildings. Now the next thing I like to do is I skip whites and blacks for now, and I add clarity to the shot. Clarity is called mid-tone, or it's mid-tone contrast. So what it does is, you can see if I go way far to the right, it's really making it look sharper. It really isn't a sharpness control, but it kind of gives that effect. See now if I turn clarity all the way down, how it made it look less sharp. So we're going to turn clarity up pretty high. I'd say around 40. Now be aware that as you turn clarity higher, you will often get noise in the image. So that's a downside of it. Also, if you have people in the shot, portraits, or just a group of people, turning clarity really high will really make their skin tone look bad. So you don't always want to turn clarity way up. So after I adjusted clarity, what I normally do now is jump back to the whites and blacks. And I'm going to show you two different ways to adjust the whites and blacks. One is to get a technical adjustment. To get a technical white point, that's what this is called, adjusting the white point. Hold the shift key in and double click on where it says whites. And you can see it automatically adjusted the whites so that our histogram is not being clipped. It's right to the edge. Now we're going to get a technical adjustment for the blacks. So we're going to hold that shift key in again, and we're going to double click right on the word blacks. And it did adjust it slightly to -7. Now it has a perfect technical adjustment. Now you may not want to do a technical adjustment. You may want to adjust it to your taste. Now another way to do it is I'm going to reset these sliders. And if you ever want to reset one slider, right where it says the name of the slider, in this case whites, now I do not have any key pressed. I'm just going to double click on where it says whites, and it put the slider back in the middle. I'm going to double click on blacks, and it put that right back in the middle. So we reset these sliders. Now another way to adjust these, if you so choose, is hold the Alt or Option key in. Now it's Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac, and then click on the slider with your mouse left button, and you can see that when I clicked on the white slider, the screen turned black. Keep moving the slider to the right until you see stuff bleed through the image. You see it's coming through, and you could get used to this and get it adjusted to your taste. Typically, for whites, I prefer to have it backed off so that just nothing is showing, like right there. Now for blacks, you would do the same thing. You would hold that Alt or Option key in, click on the black slider, and this time we're going to have to move it to the left, and you can see almost immediately stuff is bleeding through. Now I like my black sliders adjusted a little stronger than the whites. So in the whites, how I adjusted it so that everything that was bleeding through just disappeared. I like adjusting the black so I have considerably more bleeding through, like right about there. Okay, so now this basic panel is pretty much done. Now if I wanted to add some vibrance to the shot or saturation to the shot, I would adjust these sliders. Now vibrance will adjust every single color that isn't already saturated. That's what it does. Now saturation though will adjust every color whether it's saturated or not. So in this case I don't really want it more saturated like that. So I'm going to reset that. But I would like maybe a little more vibrance. So I'll bring that up a little. And you can see that's a more subtle adjustment. And I usually prefer to adjust vibrance over saturation. Some people adjust both, and maybe you would too. So if you do, feel free. So really, as far as I'm concerned right now, the basic panel is done. Now if I wanted to see the before and after, you could hit the Y key on your keyboard, and you can see here's the before shot and here's the after shot. Hit the Y key again and we come back to the after shot. Now if you have an American keyboard or a North American keyboard, you could hit the backslash key, and the backslash key now will revert back and show us the before image. You can see right up here it says before. We'll hit the backslash key again and we go back to the after image. Now some European keyboards do not have a backslash key, and it's different depending on what country you're in. I think in France, if you hit Shift S, I believe, I might be wrong on that, that will have the same effect as having the backslash key. So if anyone knows the shortcut key for a European keyboard, post it in the comments below so everyone else could know it. That would help everyone out. Thank you very much for that. Now, the basic part of this adjustment, as far as I'm concerned, is done, as you could see. So we're going to close that down. Now, there's a lot of blue in here, and I think I want to enhance the blues a little bit. So I'm going to go to this HSL Color B&W panel. I'm going to open that up, and you can see under HSL, there's 3 different tabs. There's Hue, Saturation, and Luminance. I'm not going to adjust the hue of any of the colors, but I am going to adjust the saturation of the blues a little bit. I'm going to increase it. Now you can see if I increase it greatly, you can see what it does. Now I'm just going to increase it very little, like plus 15. All right, then I'm going to go to the luminance section of this HSL panel, and I'm going to go to the blues again, and you can see now if I move it right, luminance is making it brighter. If I move it left, it's making it darker. And I want to make it just slightly darker. So I'm bringing the blues, I'm making the blues a little more saturated and a little darker, as you can see. So we're going to close that down. We're done with that. Now we're going to jump to the detail panel. This confuses a lot of people. This is sharpening and noise reduction. And I will have a video that will cover sharpening and noise reduction fully. You're going to know everything about sharpening and noise reduction. But believe me when I say this, if you're in a hurry and you just want to adjust sharpening and noise reduction so that they're pretty much perfect, I mean 80% to 90% perfect, Adjust the sharpening amount to around 70. Somewhere in 70. 71's fine. Adjust noise reduction so it's around 40. Somewhere in the 40s. And you're done. That will do a good job in most images. Trust me on that one. All right, now I mentioned this image is crooked. So we're going to go to lens corrections. Now in this case here, this specific lens and camera that I used has a built-in lens profile. In probably the next video, if not video 3, I will actually cover what to do if your lens profile isn't built in. So we're going to talk about that in a future video. But right now, we want to just straighten this. And the easiest way to straighten the image is you go to Lens Corrections under the Basic tab, and we go here to Auto. And as soon as I click Auto, you can see it straightened the image. Now, there's nothing to say that once you adjust stuff, you can't go back and readjust. Now, as I'm looking at it, it looks like it's still a tiny bit dark in here to me. So I'm just going to bring my whites to the right a little. I'm sorry, the blacks to the right a little bit. Now, I'm not holding the Alt or Option key in like I did before. I'm not holding the Shift key in and double clicking on it. I'm just adjusting it by eye. And don't be afraid to do that. This is your image, and it's, you know, you're the artist of your own image. So adjust it till you like it. And again, I'm going to hit the backslash key. There's before, there's after. I'm going to hit the Y key. That's always a nice way where you can see it side by side, before and after. And then I think I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go down here to Effects, and I'm going to go to Post Crop Vignetting. And what you can do is you could go to the right and add a white vignette, or go to the left and add a black one. I'm just going to add a very, very slight black vignette, -12. And what that does, it helps pull everyone's vision towards the middle of the frame. So a very, I guess, slight black vignette is being applied to the image. And that's it. I think this image is adjusted just fine the way it is. So I'm done. Again, this is before and this is after. There's the side-by-side view. Okay, now I'm done. How do you save it? Well, you don't have to. I could close Lightroom down. I could open it up a year later, and this image will be saved automatically. It'll look just like this. So you don't have to worry about saving the image. What you might want to do though is you might want a JPEG to put on Facebook, or put Instagram, or put it somewhere online, or you might want to send it to a printer to get printed. If that's the case, you want to export the image. And to do that, we're going to go up to File, and we're going to go down to Export right here. And we have all these different choices we have here, and we will cover these more in depth in a future video. But right now we're going to go relatively quickly. I'm going to export it to a specific folder, and right now it's my desktop. That's fine. Okay. I don't want to add it to this catalog. I'm not going to add my JPEG to the catalog because I already have the raw file here. I don't have to add the JPEG. Now, one thing I should note, a lot of people email me asking me if they should delete the raw files after they created their JPEGs. And absolutely not. Your raw files are your digital negatives. They're valuable. Hold on to those. Always keep your raw files. You could make a JPEG anytime. I could make a JPEG here and decide to delete the JPEG, and then come back to this 5 years from now and make another JPEG, and it will be exactly like that JPEG I made 5 years earlier. So the JPEGs are expendable. Your raw files are the stuff you always keep. So I'm sending it to the desktop. I'm not going to add it back into the catalog. If there's an existing name, it's going to choose a new name. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it Buffalo. Simple as that. And we're going to jump down now. It's not a video, so we're skipping that. We have different image formats. As I mentioned, we're going to do a JPEG. You could do PSD, which is a Photoshop file, a TIFF file, a DNG, which are those raw files that are proprietary of Adobe. So we're going to leave it there. I want 100% quality. sRGB color space. We're going to talk more about color space in a future video. We're not going to limit the file size at all. I'm not going to resize this image. I'm not going to make it smaller or anything like that. Resolution. Um, if you're going to print it, if you're going to export this JPEG because you're going to send it to a printer to get made into a print, put your resolution at 300. If you're just 300 pixels per inch, if you're just creating this to put on Facebook, put on 500px, or put it somewhere online, put your resolution at 72. All right, that will work fine. I want all the metadata saved with the file. That means all the lenses I used, the camera I used, all those keywords I put in it, stuff like that. I want all that to be included. I'm not going to put any watermark on it. And after I'm done post-processing, it's just going to do nothing. You could have this Lightroom actually close down if you wanted to and whatnot, but I don't. So we're going to export right like this. And you can see there's a little status bar up here in the top left-hand corner. And as Lightroom is creating this JPEG, that status bar would go across and it dings relatively loudly when the JPEG is created. Now, we're going to just minimize this for a minute. And you can see right here, Buffalo-1, there's my JPEG that I just created. And there's the image, as you can see. So that is that and how you would export an image. And we'll open this back up. Now, one quick thing I just want to show you. We're going to talk about shortcut keys a lot throughout this video series. And I encourage you to learn shortcut keys. I mentioned that I close panels down and open them up. What you could do once I'm done now and I want these panels back, I could open them up individually, but that takes a little time. The quickest way to do it is hit Shift Tab twice. You hit Shift Tab once and then hit it twice. Oops. Sorry. Shift Tab, there we go, once, then hit it twice, and there's all my side panels. Now if I want to get rid of all the panels at once, I could hit Shift Tab, see it toggles them on and off. So that is one quick way to open and close the panels all at once. So that's it for this quick start video. I hope that made a lot of sense, and as I mentioned, I glossed over a lot of things, but we will be covering them more in depth in future videos. In episode 2, we're going to process another image, and we're going to use some of the tools that are available in Lightroom, the brush tool, the spot removal tool, and so on. So be looking for that in episode 2. I'd like to thank everyone that subscribes to my videos. Thank you very much, and I'd really appreciate it if you haven't already to go to YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's it for now. I'll talk to you guys soon.